Hello. I don't know how well the sound is going to record. I'm outside at our holy well, and there in our sacred grove. We don't know how old the holy well is, at least 1700s, maybe older. The farm here goes back to the 1300s. I thought I'd do a 10-minute YouTube thing. For two reasons. Firstly, because the Aicme Grove group has reached 9,000 members, which is astounding, absolutely amazing. And also because right now, or rather tomorrow, it's summer solstice. So now is Midsummer's Eve. Makes me think of Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, Titania and Oberon. One thing I've been meaning to do for a long time, or last few months anyway, is to do an overview video about the four Aicme, the four quarters of the Aicme, because they definitely have patterns of their own. And one of the reasons I brought the lyre here is because there is a theory that the Aicme was used for writing down harp music. I've never seen any evidence of it. I'd love to. It would be really interesting. Now, the four Aicme, 5 Aicme in each quarter. So the first Aicme is the Aicme Beath, and we've already covered that with the Aicme Grove gatherings on YouTube. There's a definite pattern with each Aicme. Simplistically, the first quarter, the Aicme Beath, corresponds with the time of the year of budding, plants rising and the first buds. We call it the budding time. And the second Aicme, the Aicme Uatha Hawthorn, is the blossoming time. That time of year, all the buds have opened into flowers. And the third quarter, the Aicme Muin, is the fruiting time. All of the flowers become fruit. So that's begun with the grapevine, then ivy, broom, and blackthorn and elder, very important berries, really. And then the fourth Aicme, the Aicme Aicme, is the seeding time. That's when all the seeds come out of the fruit into the ground, ready to come up again the following spring. So simplistically, the four quarters of the year are agricultural or horticultural. Budding time, a flowering time, a fruiting time, and a seeding time. That's the first pattern. Another pattern is that 3 of the Aicme, the first, the second, and the third, are consonants in the alphabet. And the fourth Aicme is sounds. It's the 5 vowels. Got some background noise because there's an aeroplane coming. If you don't know, I'm on the island of Guernsey, and we're not far from the airport. In fact, on an island, everyone's close to the airport. So now and then there's a bit of noise overhead. Now back to the harp. I don't know about Irish harps. Mine is a Norse lyre, handmade for me in Cornwall back in the 1990s. I've had it for a long, long time. But my lyre has 15 strings. It's quite interesting because 3 of the quarters of the ogham give you 15 consonants. So the way I play my lyre is in 3 groups of 5, just like the first 3 Aicme, if you like. So this is my, I think this is the winter time. So this is like winter solstice onwards, the first 5 strings, very high pitched and almost Christmassy, almost icicles. That's just 5 strings, and they could relate to birch, rowan, alder, willow, and ash. Also, the first quarter holds imbolc. So the second quarter is the Aicme Watha. On my lyre, it's these 5 strings. A lot warmer than the first. And these 5, the second Aicme, hold beltane. And the third Aicme on my harp, the last 5 strings on my bass strings, to me, a very warm sound. Especially compared to the first Aicme. Kind of fresh and crisp and colder. So the third Aicme holds Lunasa, Celtic Festival of Lunasa. Well, I don't have 20 strings, but thinking back to the ogham, the 4th Aicme is vowels, so that's sound, or possibly the singing that the bard poet would do. And don't worry, I'm not going to sing, but just putting these ideas out there as a potential interest in how the ogham might have been used for writing down harp music. So patterns then, the first major pattern, I suppose, apart from the agricultural or seasonal times of the year, is that the last 5 letters are all vowels. All the vowels are together. Not like the Latin alphabet where they're scattered throughout the consonants. The ogham has them all lumped together. So the 4th Aicme is the Aicme of sound, or song, or speech, or poetry, or just volume, yeah, I have no idea. But directly opposite is the second Aicme. And an observation that was made this year was that the 5 letters of the second Aicme, H, D, T, C, and Q, correspond with the Irish and Proto-Celtic languages for the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there are some people that think the ogham should begin with hawthorn, because hawthorn, oak, holly corresponds with 1, 2, 3. We have talked about this in some of the Zoom sessions on Facebook. There's two ways of looking at the year. You can begin at the winter solstice with the rebirth of the sun, which seems to be what the Ogham does. It begins with birch. However, the second Aicme does have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 following the first Aicme, following the spring equinox. So some cultures did begin their year, certainly agricultural year, farming, at the spring equinox. But the Ogham, I think, is, Ogma is the sun-faced, and it's, to me at least, it's a solar wheel, it's a whole year, and it makes sense to begin with birch at winter solstice. So there's a few patterns there then. There's the 4 quarters, and that relates to Irish mythology too. So like I said, you've got the budding time, flowering time, fruit time, seed time, 4 seasons in a year. Now in Irish mythology, there's a famous magical treasure, belongs to the good god Dagda, the Dagda. He has a magical harp, and Dagda's harp has 2 names. One name is Oak of Two Blossoms. I don't know why, but it's a lovely name. I don't know what the name refers to. Oak of Two Blossoms. And the second name is very interesting, and I suspect something's a little bit lost in translation, but it translates in English as 4-angled music. So simplistically, you could say it's music divided by 4. 4-angled music. Was it 4 quarters music? But here's a thing, with his harp, Dagda, the good god, keeps the seasons turning. A harp that keeps the seasons turning, 4-angled music, 4 seasons, 4 Aicme, budding, flowering, fruiting, seeding. Now, since January, we've been looking at each tree as the sun visits each tree. We're in the end of the second Aicme. On the 30th of June, we begin the third Aicme with the days of vine. The year hardly feels like it's begun, and after tomorrow and 3 days standstill, the days get shorter already. Anyway, doing the Zoom sessions, the first 5 trees, the first Aicme, told a really interesting story with the deities that kind of correspond with each tree. So you can kind of look at the yew tree as the 0 moment. It would be like 12 o'clock on a clock, which on digital clocks is 00, double dot 00. So the first tree, the birch tree, is like 1 o'clock, really. And then the second tree is 2 o'clock, except for instead of 12 numbers around the clock, we have 20 trees. So here's the thing then, here's the pattern from the first Aicme that we've realized with the Zoom sessions. Winter solstice, rebirth of the sun. The first tree is Ellen. The birch tree corresponds with the goddess Ellen of the ways. And the name Ellen in many different cultures, Greek, Irish, Eileen, you know, it means a ray of light. So you have rebirth of the sun, and then the first tree is a ray of light, birch tree, Ellen. The second tree is Rowan and the goddess Bridget or Bridie, Brigantia. And her primary symbol is a flame. Aeroplane. So back to the first Aicme. There is winter solstice and the rebirth of the sun, birch tree and the ray of sunshine, passing on her energy to the rowan tree and Bridie with the sacred flame, the creative flame of all the things that Bridie does. She does all sorts of things like forge work and most famously poetry. So it's like the creative fire of inspiration. And she is Imbolc, of course. Then the third tree is Alder, and Alder has the mythology of Bran the Blessed and shielding, very much like Brigantia's shield. But the story of Bran is all about the cauldron of the other world, the cauldron of Annwn. And then the willow tree is the 9 muses that keep, you know, the cauldron of Annwn is kept warm by the breath of 9 maidens. And the willow tree was the sacred abode for the 9 muses of the classical world. Bardic influences from everywhere. So to recap, winter solstice, rebirth of the sun, birch tree, a ray of light, rowan tree, creative fire, alder tree, the cauldron of inspiration, willow tree, the breath of the 9 maidens, the spirit of the 9 maidens keeps the cauldron warm, cooking the inspiration. And then it concludes with the ash tree at spring equinox. And suddenly the days are longer than the nights. You know, it's got you through the cold dark of January, February, and so on, you know, and then you're at the spring equinox and you're in the light side of the year. So that whole first quarter, the first Aicme, all about rebirth of the sun and the light creative fire of inspirations, heating up the cauldron and amazing. All of that came from the Zoom sessions and the discussions we've had. Now the second Aicme, potentially the first Aicme, if you want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and spring equinox to begin your year. You could say it's the first Aicme of the light side of the year. The days are longer and warmer. All about the winter king and the summer king, or the consort that would be king, marrying the sovereignty goddess of the land, told in many different stories in many different ways. But with the first tree, it's Hawthorn, the May Queen. She's the love interest of the winter king and summer king, which traditionally now correspond with oak and holly. And oak and holly have Beltane between them. So the oak king and the holly king are battling at Beltane for the love, for the marriage of the May Queen, the sovereignty goddess. And then the fourth tree of the second Aicme, the hazel tree, is where we are now, takes you back to the poetry, if you like. So here at this ancient well, you can't see it really because it's dark, but watch this, I'll get a splash. So we're actually under overhanging hazel trees. And they're old, they've been here a while. We haven't planted them ourselves. We saw this old well was overgrown full of mud. Cleaned it up, got the water flowing again, and it trickles down to the local church. That's why we call it a holy well, because it fed the stream that goes to the church. If it was in Cornwall, there'd be ribbons tied to the trees, you know. But anyway, hazel tree over a holy well is very, very, very bardic, very, very Irish mythology, with the 9 hazel trees dropping their hazelnuts into the sacred well, feeding the salmon of wisdom. They're back to the poetry and inspiration again. And the hazel tree and the salmon take you to characters like Finn McCool, Taliesin, and as a god of eloquence and beautiful speech, Aicme himself, who created the Ogham writing system. And both Aicme and Brigid are children of the Dagda, the 4 seasons harp, the Dagda. So the first Aicme with Imbolc is Brigid, Bridie, daughter of the Dagda, goddess of poetry and inspiration. Second Aicme has the hazel trees and mercurial gods like Aicme, son of Dagda. And the second Aicme concludes with the apple tree, which is where we are now, the days of apple. Very much the sovereignty goddess, Lady Venus, in her prime, in her full beauty. You could look at it as the second Aicme, a summer king proving his worth to marry the May Queen. And it concludes with the goddess herself on her throne with the apple tree. And then the third Aicme, beginning with vine and wine and corresponding with the constellation of Crater, the wine mixing cup, which was the sacred cup for ancient mystery rites. It's also the divine marriage between the Lord and the Lady. And that seems to be played out, at least star law wise, with the third Aicme at Lunacer, with Ivy being the Lord and Broom the golden haired, yellow haired bride. Anyway, that's just a glimpse, kind of said what I wanted to say. Just that as much as we can look at individual trees, there are bigger patterns, the 4 quarters. Each quarter has its own story, I think. It certainly seems to be panning out that way. And as much as the 4th quarter is vowels, and the 2nd quarter is numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, still don't know what hidden thing there is for the 1st quarter or the 3rd quarter. But maybe the star law mythologies might help with that. Anyway, that's me done. Wishing everybody a very happy summer solstice. Here's to the next 6 months. Amazing. Best wishes.